This is Sam and Praneeth, who head up our attribution platform here at Pod and Ad Velocity. I think I'd like to just kind of delve into our understanding of attribution and the industry's understanding of attribution. And I mean, Sam, you came from a background of SEO to start with. What did you rely on in terms of your source of truth and attribution, and what did you understand attribution to be when you first started in the industry?
Yes, we've always kind of gone off Google Analytics GA4 as the primary source of how we can attribute for SEO. And I think it's always been a tough point because there'll be tracking errors and there'll be issues, and whether we're truly attributing to the correct channel. So it's always been a bit of a roadblock, really.
And were you even around at the time when Universal Analytics used to allow us to see the keywords?
No, that was before my time.
So right now, do you feel SEO is the poor relation?
I think SEO is very hard to attribute against because it's quite an educational search result, really. I think a lot of people, when they've done the sales journey, they often will visit through PPC. So we find a lot of the weighting is typically towards PPC when that doesn't really tell the full story of how the customer has accessed the website.
So what's your understanding of the vision of what true attribution should be?
It's being able to track every single touch point in the user journey. Now we've got multiple marketing channels. You've got email, SEO, social media, PPC. So depending on the order of value of the product, someone's doing a research for several days. So you're encountering multiple touch points before actually making the purchase. So SEO is probably undercredited because it's really the last click. So when multiple touch points are involved in the journey, it's the ability to track every single touch point that plays a role in accurate attribution or assigning the right credit to each and every purchase. So if you're just looking at by last click, you're naturally going to undercredit every single channel in the user's journey, which means if you're not actively looking at the channels driving growth, then you're going to cut those channels because you think it's not really sort of providing any value, which means you're going to lose those channels trying to bring growth, introducing your brand to all the customers, and it's going to have a negative impact in your overall marketing budget and revenue.
And I guess you've got the kind of different types of attribution. So, we've got the on-site attribution, which is predominantly a lot easier to track, and there are platforms out there like Triple Whale, which are some of the big brand names out there that are reasonably good at tracking the on-site side of things. But then you've got the off-site, and then you've got the combination of the two. So you have businesses that have got an e-com, and then they've got showrooms or stores. So they've got online transactions, offline transactions, and from your perspective, where do you think sort of the biggest gain is when you use an attribution platform in terms of marketing? So if you can attribute on and off-site, say, when you've seen the platform at its best, what does it tend to do in terms of benefits?
I think it's being able to understand conversion rate by which channel is actually driving growth. So if online is only a fraction of the slice of total revenue and you're only measuring online, you're only looking at fraction of the sale. So you're optimizing for a small percentage of your actual growth. And if you don't look at what's actually bringing your high value customers through the offline channels, then you're not going to see the total benefit of marketing channels. So you might accidentally cut a few channels out which are actually bringing your high value customers. So there's a big necessity in being able to attribute the offline sales. So you need to be able to track your phone calls, your web forms, your showroom visits, and then look at what's driven them from a marketing side. So your CRM obviously knows the value of the sale because you do you send out the quote letter or you make the
Invoice
order and then you put the information back in the CRM. So the customer details lie in there, but we don't know what marketing channels actually drove that session into the website. They see the phone number or they book a session or like a showroom visit. So we need to be able to track those touch points so that we know what's actually driving new customers in. The different channels working together to bring high value customers. So these are sort of other touch points that most platforms sort of discount. And if you're a business that relies heavily on offline sales, it is important for you to have visibility over everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, in summary, we need to be thinking about prospective clients for this attribution platform, sort of sitting in sort of four main silos. You've got regional lead gen, you've got national lead gen, you've got e-com, and then you've got this combination e-com, which can be lead gen and online transactions. So that actually is the landscape of the profile of site that we've got out there. What we then need to be able to say is, right, let's understand every single touch point. What that allows us to do is understand the relationships between the various different channels. And more importantly, the paid and the non-paid channels, so that all the paid channels don't get credited disproportionately for that. What that then enables the owner of the site to do is not cut off the source of the Nile. So are we cutting off, the platform that's generating the brand awareness because we can't see the conversions coming from there? The next thing that we're doing is we're feeding that information back to the platforms. So we're then optimizing. So the good stuff we're saying to Google, Meta, LinkedIn, get us more of that. Yeah. We are dealing with some of the most successful algorithms and the biggest algorithms out there, but they're only any good if you feed them the correct data. And then you've got the confidence because you're looking at the same numbers on the platform as you're looking at in your P&L. Whereas as it stands at the moment, if you're doing multi-channel advertising, all the channels are putting their hand up for the full value of the transaction because they played a part in it. And I can understand why they're doing that, So, that is what attribution is to me. Do you see it any differently?
No, I think I kind of echo what you were just saying. I think, when you think of the brand awareness, especially through social media, a lot of brands might see that, social doesn't particularly convert very well to sales because people are using it to learn more about the brand, the products, what the services are, and then they'll often revisit at a later date through SEO or through PPC. And so you don't see the true impact that social's had when somebody's scrolling on LinkedIn and sees the advert that actually starts off, it kickstarts the journey for the user.
And I think for an emerging market where people don't even know that the product exists, so you can educate the consumer through social media, but quite often they won't purchase through social media. They'll cross-reference the website, click on the website, buy through the website, or even go to Amazon. Quite often I'm on social media, and I'll see something that I quite like the look of, but then I'll think, well, I want it delivered tomorrow, so I'll get straight to Amazon and get delivery. We need to be able to sew those journeys up so that people who are running these e-com businesses and lead gen businesses can take confidence that the decisions that are being made from a marketing perspective are actually driving true bottom line growth and margin. So, I mean, I think my view of attribution is broadly that, but I think you're quite a fan of going back, Praneeth, a couple of years in terms of data, aren't you? So what sort of experience have you had with sort of going back and looking at historic data even before we've put a tag on a website?
Well, when you put the tag on the website, it's only when the tracking starts. So we don't actually know what happened previously. If anyone comes back on the website, it could be an existing customer. But for us, when we're tracking, it's a new customer. So what going back helps is to basically split new and existing customers. And that also gives us information about seasonal variations within the data. So you might have off periods during the month, and you might have, peak periods where customers are coming back to purchase in large quantities. So this sort of helps us to build sort of like a recommendation engine. So if you've got products that sell during the winter season but not during the summer, so we know when come winter season we should be pushing for these products and what these campaigns should be sort of pushing for. So within our system, what we sort of build for is the recommendation. So the 2 years data, not just from your customer base, but also the ad platforms, because we know historically what campaigns worked, what didn't, what the return on investment was. So all of this sort of helps us to builds this recommendation engine, and then determine what the true value of each channel is. So once we put the tracking on, we can dive deeper into user journeys, because there are so many variations within user journeys. So the touch points I've had to purchase the same product might not be the same as what you'd have. As you said about social earlier, it's never the last click. So if you're constantly focusing on last click driven platforms, then it's going to undercredit social. So what we sort of do with historical data as well as the user journeys is run an incrementality modeling. What that basically measures is the true value of a particular channel. So we try to run a scenario where we can determine what the true loss of revenue is if we switch off a channel. So that tells you that, while you might look at certain platforms that give full credit to first click or last click, there are so many touch points involved that carry as much weight, if not more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I find amazing when I go back retrospectively with clients and their campaigns, both on PPC, Meta, and generally, is take ecom. A recent example was that they had price bandings of products, so their average order value was £76 in this case, but they had products that were selling for in excess of £200, and they had products that were selling for sub £50. Well, they were applying the same ROAS method to all of those. And actually, there were so many products that these high value products were not actually showing all the time. And they weren't sort of carved out and had separate rules. And then there's the consideration time versus product. So, in some of the low average order values, the consideration time can be a day, 2 days, that kind of thing. So we were working with quite an interesting interiors company, and a spontaneous 25, 40 quid purchase. Consideration time was almost instantaneous, but then they had sort of furniture there, where the consideration time was sometimes, 3 weeks to 6 weeks. So we were making decisions on a daily basis based on ROAS, but very, very different product types. So you almost need to have individual rules based on average order value and consideration time as well. So, there is a lot to consider when it comes to attribution. But I think the key to this is we need to understand the business. The best way to understand that is to go back 2 years, look at what's been successful. The past is the best predictor of the future. Identify what didn't work so that we don't do that again. And then agree the findings with the owner of the site, because their insight to their business and the anomalies that are brought up by the data are invaluable. Put all of that information together and create an action plan moving forward tends to really resonate and get some really great results.